whatever the skill set is. So we do need to know this information, and we need somebody to do it that's very skilled in that area. I would like to comment that from the Chamber's perspective, one of the key issues for us is how do we retain the employees we already have? How do we keep from losing them? And so it needs to have a top-down review of what you're doing, what type of programs are you doing to secure those employees so that they don't want to leave. Kind of like a golden handcuff situation where the employer wants to be with this employee and the employee wants to be with this employer. If you can establish those type of programs, you can keep your employee. But it can't be done the day they're walking out the door. They have to be done beforehand. So I think that's probably the premier issue of Chamber members as it relates to retention.
Okay, Mary?
Two things. I know James mentioned earlier about the additional jobs out there, and Maria had mentioned earlier in her statement that I think there were over 3,000 applicants for jobs. I mean, that's our situation today. We still have an unemployment rate. There's still employable people out there, and I think Department of Labor needs to do a little bit more to try to get those people matched up with the jobs today so that we can get people trained and get into the positions that, that are available today, so that when we deal with the huge influx, we're really reaching out to that next generation of applicants. Also, I know that we keep talking about forward-looking stuff. In the near future, we are going to have the census study, which I think is very good. The last time we had one was in 2000. Also, the second thing is, I think it was great, James and I went out together with Joe Arnett from Chamber and Bill Gibson from the Employers Council to D.C. to address the issues prior to the passing of the National Defense Authorization Act. And one of the benefits that came out of that was that we were granted, they were requiring U.S. Department of Labor to actually do a wage survey, which it's been 20 years? Maria? How long has it been for the wage survey?
Guam Department of Labor has not done a wage survey.
U.S., like 20 years? 1995. Since 1995. So that's really good news for us, because as much as organizations like ours, GHRA, we do our annual wage survey to give or continue to add on to the benchmark and give all of our members an idea of where we're at with things, especially with the last 3 years of federal wage increases. It's nice to know where we're plodding along against the graph, but in retrospect, though, it's just not enough information. So you have the Guam census coming as a resource, and then you'll have this annual wage survey from the U.S. Department annual. And that annual wage survey will be without the H-2 worker information as well, without their wages. So it'll be a real true market study out there of what people are paying, what kind of positions are out there, how many people are in it. And so I think that's really good news for Guam, and I think that's really good news for the buildup and for private sector and for the government of Guam to refer to.
Okay, sounds good. James?
Going back to Uncle Carl's remark there about how do we retain our employees in the private sector. And again, going back to the GAO report with the 1,600 jobs that the military is looking at, again, we don't have to worry about them because they're going to be coming outside to pull your employees to work on the base. And it all comes back to the greenback. But we also need to understand that we've got to upgrade the skills of our local workforce and see, because we're going to go through a supply and demand issue, that we're going to have a small supply, a high demand for workers and a small supply outside. We need to upgrade and educate our current workforce and our younger people, even as early as middle school, to take on these jobs in the future so that we can actually move up and increase our wage rates and be able to retain our current workforce and not lose them to the military. I know right now, at least contractors and even the hotel industry are losing a lot of their engineers to Naval Facilities Engineering and Command. And so we have to go outside again to look at that talent pool to bring in some more engineers for these upcoming projects. But again, that's a supply and demand issue, and we're going to be seeing a lot of that, which is a good thing for Guam, because that's when you see our wage rates increase because of that. So let the economy take care of the wage rates, and it will. And this is one way of showing that our wage rates will probably increase in the next 5 years.
Thank you, James. Okay, the next question. The lack of workforce training is the first thing we hear as companies start the process to recruit H-2 workers. How many H-2 workers is too many? What is the healthy relationship between foreign and domestic workers so that wages and benefits are not negatively affected? Maria?
May I go last? No.
No, you have to go first.
No, actually, only the employers can answer how much is too much for H2. It's really, again, always remember that recruiting H2 is the last resort. The process is an employer goes to the Department of Labor and we assist them in their recruitment. So for example, right now, the new regulation as far as the Defense Authorization Act, which requires the employers to hire American workers. So are the employers right now, are you prepared? Do you have a recruiting plan? Have you really thought it out, and have you established your rating standards, your qualification standards? There's a lot of work ahead, right? So in answer to your question, labor will continue to help. Our role there, and this is what I've told the staff time and time again, we are there to help them succeed, to help the employers succeed. We will be there to assist them as much as possible to try to fill your vacancies with our local people or people from within the freely associated states or people from the United States before bringing in foreign workers. As far as training, I mentioned earlier that we have an excellent working relationship with the community college, even the Department of Education with bringing in high school students, and we have programs already set up. It's just the funding. The GAO report shows that I have requested for $23 million. And that $23 million is really to train our people.
Carl?
Part of the question was where are we going to get the people before we get to the H-2s. If you don't mind, I'll share your story. You shared with me the other day that you have 3 overeducated and 3 underemployed children.
Yes, they are unemployed, Carl. Thank you for bringing that up.
You said that
About me and Jerry's kids, that's fine.
They're underemployed from their degree field, and they have advanced degree, but they cannot find it on the mainland. So the point is, we need to bring those back home. And I think all of us in this room have either relatives or we know of people on the mainland that we could probably be instrumental in encouraging them to take advantage of the opportunities that are going to be available. Now, on the side of the H-2s, it's simply a supply and demand. If an employer needs 2,000 employees, he doesn't order 3,000. He only orders what they need, and at the very minimum, because it's about trying to make a profit on a project. And supply and demand is the law. If you were in charge of ordering oranges, for instance, for one of the markets, and you intended to order a container of oranges, but you made a mistake and ordered a shipload of oranges, and that arrived today, guaranteed the price of oranges tomorrow is going to be very low. But the opposite would be true too. If there was no oranges, well, oranges would be in high demand and be higher priced. So prices are going to be pushed up, and it's going to impact everybody. Because if somebody's in the hotel and they get an offer, a job to work in the base, it's $5 or $10 higher, they're going to take that job. And so in order to compete, the hotels are going to have to pay whatever the job description is, they're going to have to pay a lot more. So prices are going to go up because labor is a cost. And so the cost of the rooms are going to go up, the cost of food is going to go up, the cost of everything will go up because labor costs are going up. And, but at some point in time, hopefully they'll level off or they'll regress just a little bit so that it doesn't impose too great of a problem on the local population.
Okay, Mary, perfect.
I usually agree with Carl on everything, usually. But his last statement was not everything goes up. And I'll tell you, because this year what we've seen with the federal wage increase the last 3 years, yes, wages have been going up, and that's great, benefiting everybody. They're finally up to par with everybody else in the U.S. But the thing is, our pricing hasn't gone up. And that's a huge challenge in the tourism industry because we have to compete in Asia where the prices are different. And it's not like competing in Hawaii or in California or anywhere else as far as the tourist destination. So that's why tourism industry is just so sensitive to those types of things because we can't